This video is brought to you by my patrons, my thoughts and opinions, the person who requested this video, and nothing beautiful because that is forbidden. I don't know how I live with myself. Hi, and welcome to, or back to, my channel where I talk about whatever catches my attention. I'm Kit, and in August, I received this suggestion in my submission form, which, by the way, is linked below. The YouTuber redacted because their channel, though larger than mine as per usual, is still not of a size where I feel comfortable platforming them, claims that feminists hate beauty in this video. And I thought, you know what? I need a short video, so let's see what this person has to say. And can I just say to start, it's really funny that someone who was very loudly not a feminist, perhaps anti-feminist even, purports to be able to explain something feminists allegedly believe. That's like an atheist trying to explain why Christians believe in Jesus. Of course, Christians actually do believe in Jesus, while feminists don't actually hate beauty, so thank goodness we have this person to explain it to us. I'm very curious as to know why I apparently hate beauty, and I also hope we get an explanation as to how we're qualifying beauty because, well, it is in the eye of the beholder. Anyway, let's get into it.
Gentlemen, today's topic is women, and the phenotype we will be examining today is the feminist.
I'm not a scientist, but feminism isn't a phenotype, but I suspect I know where they're going with this.
This type of woman gets very agitated by men, specifically when men go out of their way to annoy women by doing something we call playing video games. Because as we know, there's absolutely nothing more misogynistic than playing a video game with a woman in it. Specifically when you decide to play as a woman who is attractive and not one who's ugly or, Lord forbid, morbidly obese. But on a serious note, why is this?
So, being a feminist means you get agitated by men, especially when men go out of their way to agitate you. That doesn't make any sense. Anyone can agitate anyone, and yes, if you try to agitate someone, you'll likely succeed. That has nothing to do with feminism. And I'm pretty over this whinging about video games. Not every female character is going to be hot or barely wearing clothes. And there's plenty of other games out there that would fulfill those requirements. Though I would have thought the requirements for a good game would be an interesting story and good gameplay, but apparently being attracted to the characters is also important. Anyway, they go on to say that the reason there's sexy women in video games is because of feminism fighting for the sexual revolution. I'm sorry. Has this person ever seen any vintage advertisements? Anyway, again, the sexual revolution and the second wave of feminism occurred alongside each other. They are not interchangeable, and both are still ongoing. If the sexual revolution, for example, was complete, there wouldn't be men throwing fits because there wasn't a barely dressed hot woman in his video game.
Feminists have always been in favor of women's sexual liberation, and why many of them today are stars. And I cannot think of any line of work more degrading to a woman as a whole, where you're not valued as a person, you're only valued for your body, which would be and prostitution. Yet it is because of feminism that these lines of work continue to be allowed in our society. It is feminists who are pushing for prostitution to be legalized. It is feminists who are filming perfect material. So it makes no sense. We know that these claims are bullshit.
I already suspected that this person didn't know much about feminism, but this confirms it for me. Feminists are the ones propping up prostitution and porn? Buddy, who pays for it? But even setting that aside, this person is clearly unfamiliar with feminist thought about, well, anything, most likely, but there are feminists ardently against porn and prostitution. And there are those who want to legalize it because when you criminalize those things, you're only punishing the workers, not the buyers. And if someone is scared they're going to be arrested, they're not going to report abuse, they're not going to go to the doctor if it can be at all avoided. I would also like to remind everyone that per this person, feminism is about being agitated by men, but also apparently about doing sex work, as they also claim feminists are the ones filming porn. To which I would like to know, if men just agitate you so much that you've taken on a whole political movement, but being intimate with men is your job, do you think that person really wants to be there doing that job? Moving on, I think the point we're supposed to take here is that porn exists and is much worse, so barely dressed, attractive women in video games should be no big deal.
We don't even have to look at the most famous books in the world made for women, like 50 Shades of Grey, which was written by E.L. James, who was also a feminist. Again, the people who degrade themselves tend to be feminists.
How are we figuring E.L. James is a feminist? Is it because she's a woman? Also, how is writing erotic romance degrading? This is weirdly puritanical for someone who's arguing that women should be sexy in video games.
But to be fair to feminists, there are some really vile shows out there that exist. One like Redo Healer, where to summarize it up, the main character is treated horribly by women. He's put down by them, he's shamed by them, he's attacked by them. They do horrible things to him. But then he gets superpowers, and obviously, like the hero he is, he decides to get revenge on these women by going on a massive spree. Like, holy shit, that's such a horrible show. Like, what the fuck? And according to the author of the story, he says it's more popular among women than it is men. Yikes, that really doesn't help feminists out on this one. But I can already hear the feminists typing, no, it's not actually what we fantasize about. No, we would never want it to happen to us, ever, in an unsafe environment. Because that's their number one fantasy. That's what they say, literally, according to themselves. That's not me saying it. I'm literally the messenger of women. I'm representing what women want according to women. If you get angry at me, get angry at the women. That's insane.
I'm not going to shame people for their fantasies, but I really want to know, does this person think that if a woman who has a rape fantasy is actually raped, she would just be like, wow, that was a real dream come true? There is a big difference between fantasy and reality, and I'm really not sure what is being argued for here. That if women have rape fantasies, it should be okay? That if women have those fantasies, men should be able to freely objectify women because really women want it?
Like when guys say that they're confused about what women want, this is what we're talking about. I know it's a fantasy and it doesn't mean it's a real thing, or they would be happy if it actually happened. Of course, don't misrepresent me out there, you snakes. I'm not saying it's actually something they want for real, but it's their number one fantasy.
Well, I'm glad they at least said that, but this is part of the problem. The study they showed on screen is from Psychology Today and is about the results of a study done by the University of North Texas and the University of Notre Dame on 355 young women. And this person comes along and says, this is why men are confused by women. Being raped is their number one fantasy. They studied 0.0002% of women. And even if they had somehow managed to study 50% of women, you still shouldn't be trying to understand women through studies. Talk to them. Get to know them. Treat them like people. Don't listen to channels like this person's, who acts as though a minuscule subset of women speaks for all 4 billion of us.
But I digress. That's not the topic of this video. The point I brought all of that up is because it shows it has nothing to do with the quote-unquote male gaze or objectifying women. No, it has nothing to do with those things, but it simply has to do with one thing: their outlook of the world. This outlook of the world causes them to hate beauty, specifically when men value beauty. When they care about beauty and they find it attractive, they hate that.
I truly don't understand how any of what they just said got us to the point of feminists hate beauty. And also, they do know that feminist isn't interchangeable with woman, right?
Because these feminists have a particular way of viewing history. They call it feminist standpoint theory. Now, feminist standpoint theory as a whole is incredibly fucked up. It makes no sense.
I believe we're supposed to infer that feminists just believe in feminist standpoint theory without question, but it has controversies outside of feminism and within. Does this person think feminists just naturally agree with everything other feminists write or do? Anyway, I'm very curious as to what they read that led them to the following conclusion, because it's sounding ahistorical and not all that feminist to me.
And they believe that women in the past had absolutely no power in society, that women were simply objects of beauty and pleasure. Their only purpose was childbirth in those patriarchal societies. From their perspective, if you were a woman in the past, you had absolutely no power, and you were entirely dependent on men. You couldn't choose what type of man you would be with, and you had absolutely no control over your own life. It was all tied to men. Men decided who you married, and men decided how successful you would be. At least those men you were forced to marry. But one of those key traits that would decide how successful you would be, your status in society, is your beauty. Because that is something women were valued for, how beautiful they were.
The status of women fluctuated based on the time period and where in the world she was. And I am highly skeptical of how concerned a, let's say, farmer was about the beauty of his bride. And for that matter, even a potential king probably didn't get to care all that much, because at that level, it was all about political moves and forging alliances through marriage. And I'm pretty sure in the past, most women, as well as men, were valued by how much we worked. The time and money to spend on beauty was reserved only for the privileged few. But okay, feminists hate beauty because in the past, that's all women were valued for.
There are stories throughout all of history where men have literally gone to war over women. Helen of Troy, for example. Or kings have gone out of their way to marry a woman for nothing but their beauty, as King David lusted after a woman taking a bath.
I'm sorry, we're going to Greek mythology and the Bible as proof that men would go to war for beautiful women? I'm so confused as to how we ended up here. We started with feminists hate beauty and now we're at Helen of Troy. Anyway, the wax poetic about how beauty could decide your place in society, but how that comes with a caveat. Being born ugly, and that means the one thing you could leverage, beauty, is gone. Well, it can't be gone because you never had it, but anyway, I'm not sure that's how caveats work, but yes, there are, and always have been, people of varying degrees of attractive in society. This is news how? And if you're wondering what on earth that has to do with feminism, you'll never guess.
And as a result, feminism as an ideology became very attractive to ugly women.
Yup, women only became feminists because they were too ugly to get a man. But hey, they're not saying that feminists are ugly. They're just saying it became attractive to ugly women. And if we're going with that framing, now, wait a minute. Per this person, feminist standpoint theory is fucked up, but they use it to explain how feminists hate beauty because back in the day, that's the only way women could improve their situation in life. I was thinking they disagreed with that, but they're using it to build the base that was indeed true, and that's why ugly women were attracted to feminism, because it didn't base their worth on their beauty. But wouldn't that make sense then? Of course, you don't want to rely on someone else for how comfortable you are in life, and if your prospects are dismal, you'll be looking for something else. And then the attractive women, seeing how free the feminists are, became interested because, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but most women, no matter how attractive they are or not, don't want to have to rely on someone else for how comfortable they are. That's not how feminism came about, by the way, and a lot, if not most, of the OG feminists were married with kids, but even the way this person is trying to describe it, it would make sense. Of course, women would want to be free to exercise their own agency over their life. Beauty doesn't mean you're happy to submit yourself to a man and his whims. But, I suspect this person might live in fantasy a bit too much.
Of all the things I'm saying right now about feminists, this is not an attack. This is just what it is. Because again, women would be dependent on beauty. And that separated many women from each other. You had women who attracted powerful men purely because of beauty, something that they couldn't control. They had no power over. And this beauty would be a great source of inequality in society. Just among women. You're married to a poor man who's a loser and has nothing, well, you're lower status. But if you're a beautiful, attractive woman, you could be homeless on the side of the street, but a king could stumble by and see you and say, hey, I'll take you as my wife. And all of a sudden, you're married to the most powerful man in the world. Of course, that changes your status.
Who a king married was not entirely up to him. There was a lot of strategic thought put into that. If he did see an attractive woman, odds are more likely that, well, nothing would happen, but at most, she would become his courtesan and not his queen. And at that, I do notice that they're carefully avoiding how beauty can also attract attention from the people you don't want to be noticed by. Anyway.
Making beauty a great source of inequality because men valued it, because men cared about it. That's especially why feminists will get very angry at men who value and care about beauty, who explicitly say, look, I love a great personality. I'd love somebody who would compliment my life. But I want her to be beautiful. I don't want her to be fat. That's why it gets so under their skins.
Breaking news. Most people want to be with someone they're attracted to. I'm so shocked.
Making beauty a source of oppression, if you think about it. Beauty existing and being valued causes this inequality that is unjust in its nature. You cannot control or decide how beautiful you are. Beauty is not an earned virtue. It simply separates you from each other. It gives some people a great life, and it gives other people a horrible life.
That's a new one, but you can have a great life and not be beautiful. And you can have a bad life and be beautiful. Beauty is not a ticket to Easy Street. There's always trade-offs to be made. But these folks really are out there thinking that beautiful women just have it good, aren't they?
And feminists, ideologically speaking, are all about women pursuing their own careers and having control over their own lives.
Guilty as charged. Everyone should have control over their own life.
And as long as men care about this superficial trait, as they call it, it will continue to be a source of oppression and inequality.
What? A woman being beautiful has no effect on my life. Unless they're thinking, well, that beautiful woman took a man who might otherwise be interested in me if I was beautiful and she wasn't, or something. But no, if someone isn't interested in me, they're not interested. Has nothing to do with the beauty of others, and I don't think attractive women have stolen something that I should have or are oppressing me because they're beautiful. What even is this?
Which is why feminists at their core, whether they admit it or not, hate beauty, and especially men valuing beauty, men caring about beauty. It's a remnant of that old past of patriarchal rule. This is how they see the world. But nobody wants to admit that they hate beauty, and one of the reasons why they're attracted to feminism as an ideology is because they're less attractive. No, we're just gonna call you sexist, misogynistic, hateful, that you're objectifying women, because that's easier and it looks a lot better. Which is why feminists hate beauty.
Okay, well, I hope that cleared it up for everyone. Feminists hate beauty because in the past that was all women were valued for, and therefore it's oppressive. Question: what about feminists who are beautiful? Anyway, per the channel bio, this person's goal is to give you something to think about and a new perspective to chew on. And I have to say, I'm disappointed. There's nothing new about someone accusing feminists of being ugly or of being jealous of attractive women. Literally, since the beginning of feminism, people have accused feminists of being ugly with no maidens, or prospects of maidens. And I'd be willing to bet that most women, feminist or not, rely on their appearance much less than folks like this person think. Personally, I think about my looks much less than those who don't like what I have to say, which is pretty much how it goes. Don't like what someone says and have nothing to say in response? Insult their appearance. I guess we'll see how much of that I get in the comments. It all depends on the title, really. Some get more attention than others. Anyway, to the person who sent this video in, I hope you enjoyed it. I feel like I should leave some history books or something in the description box. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.